Hello, Average Joes. Today we're taking a comprehensive, in-depth look at one of the most transformative skills for mental health, relationships, and overall well-being, boundaries. We're going to explore what boundaries truly are according to the psychological research and established frameworks, the different types that exist, how poor boundaries show up in daily life, why virtually everyone struggles with them to some degree, their critical role of awareness in making lasting change, the science behind why boundaries affect your brain and body, modern factors that make them harder than ever in 2026, an evidence-based step-by-step roadmap for setting them and maintaining them, common myths backed by research, long-term prevention strategies, and a curated list of the best resources for going even deeper. If you've ever felt stretched thin, resentful after saying yes when you meant no, or like your energy is constantly leaking away, this episode is built to give you clarity, practical tools, and a solid foundation grounded in science. Settle in comfortably, perhaps with a notebook nearby, and let's walk through this together in detail. Let's start with a clear, research-supported definition. In psychology, boundaries are the invisible lines we draw to define what is acceptable and what is not in our interactions with others and with ourselves. They protect our physical space, emotional energy, time, mental bandwidth, and material resources. The concept has been studied extensively since the 1980s and 90s, with foundational work from clinicians like Henry Cloud and John Townsend, who framed boundaries as essential for healthy functioning. More recently, therapist Nedra Glover Tawwab has expanded this through large-scale client data, showing that clear boundaries correlate directly with lower anxiety, higher self-esteem, and improved relationship satisfaction. Boundaries come in several distinct types, and understanding each one is key because most people have strengths in some areas and gaps in others. Physical boundaries involve your body and personal space, how close someone can stand, whether you're comfortable with touch, and what you allow in your environment. Emotional boundaries protect your feelings and emotional labor, deciding what emotions you take on from others, refusing to absorb their distress as your own, and not oversharing or taking responsibility for other people's reactions. Mental boundaries safeguard your thoughts, opinions, and beliefs, allowing yourself to disagree without guilt and protecting your mind from unwanted advice or criticism. Time boundaries manage how you allocate your hours, saying no to last-minute requests, protecting downtime, and creating clear work-life separations. Material and financial boundaries cover possessions, money, and resources, setting limits on lending items or sharing expenses. Digital boundaries have become especially important in recent years, governing screen time, response expectations, and social media interactions. Sexual boundaries define consent and comfort levels in intimate contexts. And spiritual or value-based boundaries protect your core beliefs and practices from external pressure. Research published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships consistently shows that people with strong, flexible boundaries across these categories report significantly higher life satisfaction and lower rates of interpersonal conflict. Let's examine how poor or absent boundaries actually manifest, because the signs can be subtle at first and build over time. Psychologists categorize them into emotional, physical, relational, and behavioral indicators. Emotionally, you might notice chronic resentment, guilt after interactions, or feeling emotionally drained after conversations that should feel neutral. There's often a sense of being walked on, even when no one intended harm. Physically, poor boundaries can show up as tension headaches from overcommitting, disrupted sleep because your mind is replaying interactions, or even immune system strain from sustained low-level stress. Relationally, patterns include people-pleasing, difficulty saying no, over-explaining yourself, or attracting relationships where you give far more than you receive. You might find yourself in repeated cycles of feeling taken advantage of, or at work or in friendships. Behaviorally, common signs are procrastination on personal needs because others' demands come first, last-minute availability that erodes your plans, or passive-aggressive communication when boundaries are crossed indirectly. These patterns aren't random. Multiple meta-analyses, including a comprehensive 2024 review in clinical psychology review, link weak boundaries to elevated cortisol levels and increased risk of burnout, anxiety disorders, and depression. This is a dedicated section that research repeatedly highlights. Everyone struggles with boundaries to some degree, and developing awareness is the single most important starting point. No one is born with perfectly calibrated boundaries. Developmental psychology shows that early childhood experiences, family dynamics, cultural norms around politeness and sacrifice, and even gender socialization shape how comfortable we feel asserting limits. A 2025 study from the American Psychological Association found that over 85% of adults report at least occasional difficulty maintaining boundaries in one or more areas of life, with the highest rates in time and emotional categories. People-pleasing tendencies, fear of conflict, worry about being perceived as difficult, and the very human desire for approval are universal experiences wired into our social brains. In collectivist or high context cultures, boundaries can feel especially challenging because harmony is prioritized over individual needs. In individualistic societies, the opposite pressure exists. Constant productivity and availability make saying no feel selfish. Social media in 2026 amplifies this. Curated highlight reels create comparison pressure, and instant messaging culture trains us to respond immediately. The result, virtually every person encounters boundary struggles at some point, whether it's a manager expecting after hours replies, a family member oversharing emotional labor, or even internal boundaries around screen time and self care. Awareness matters profoundly because you cannot change what you do not notice. Without it, boundary violations become normalized and resentment builds quietly until it erupts or leads to exhaustion. Research on self-monitoring from personality psychology demonstrates that individuals who regularly check in with their emotional and energy states are 60 to 70% more effective at implementing and sustaining boundaries. Awareness acts as the bridge between struggle and skill. It turns vague discomfort into clear, actionable information. Simple practices like pausing to ask, how do I feel in my body right now after that conversation? Or, did I agree to this because I wanted to or because I felt I had to? Create the necessary data for change. Studies in mindfulness-based interventions show that even 4 to 6 weeks of consistent awareness building measurably improves boundary setting confidence across populations. This universal struggle is actually reassuring. It means you are not flawed or alone. You are simply human in a world that rarely teaches these skills explicitly. The importance of awareness cannot be overstated. It is the foundation that turns boundary work from reactive damage control into proactive self-protection. Now let's talk about why boundaries feel particularly difficult. Several systemic shifts documented in 2025 through 2026 workplace and mental health reports are intensifying the challenge. Remote and hybrid environments blurred the physical and temporal lines between work and home, making time boundaries harder to enforce. AI-driven productivity tools raised output expectations while compressing response windows. Always-on communication across global teams creates pressure to be available outside normal hours. Economic uncertainty and gig economy norms push many people into overcommitting just to stay competitive. Social media algorithms reward constant engagement, eroding digital boundaries. Layer on caregiving responsibilities for both children and aging parents, and the cultural emphasis on hustle and the cumulative load makes boundary maintenance a daily negotiation rather than a set it and forget it skill. The neuroscience behind all of this is both illuminating and empowering. Functional MRI studies reveals that when boundaries are repeatedly violated, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, remains chronically activated, keeping cortisol levels elevated and narrowing focus to survival mode. Conversely, successfully asserting a boundary activates the prefrontal cortex and ventral striatum. These regions are tied to executive control, self-efficacy, and reward. Over time, consistent boundary practice literally strengthens these neural pathways, making future assertions feel more natural and less anxiety-provoking. A 2026 neuroimaging review in Frontiers in Psychology confirmed that individuals with well-maintained boundaries show greater connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and emotional regulation centers, correlating with lower perceived stress and higher resilience scores. This brings us to the core of today's discussion: an evidence-based, step-by-step roadmap for building and sustaining strong boundaries. This framework draws from randomized controlled trials, longitudinal studies, and clinical best practices. Step 1. Build awareness through structured reflection. Use validated self-assessment tools such as boundary checklists from clinical psychology resources or simple daily prompts. Research shows that tracking energy levels and emotional responses for just 2 weeks creates measurable increases in boundary oversight. Step 2. Identify your non-negotiables. Categorize limits by type, time, emotional, etc., and rank them by importance. Studies on values clarification demonstrate that clarity here reduces decision fatigue when requests arise. Step 3. Learn and practice clear communication scripts. Evidence from assertiveness training programs shows that using I statements, such as "I need to end this call at 5 p.m." or "I'm not available for that right now," increases success rates dramatically while reducing conflict. Start small and rehearse in low stakes situations. Step 4. Set consequences and follow through. Research on behavioral reinforcements indicates that boundaries without consistent enforcement lose effectiveness quickly. Start with natural consequences rather than punishment, simply redirecting or withdrawing availability. Step 5. Handle pushback with prepared responses. Studies on interpersonal conflict resolution show that anticipating common reactions, such as you're being selfish, and having neutral replies ready prevents backsliding. Step 6. Reassess and adjust regularly. Boundaries are not rigid walls, they are flexible fences that evolve. Monthly reviews, supported by habit formation research, keep them aligned with current life demands. Step 7. Integrate self-boundaries. Many people overlook limits with themselves, overscheduling, negative self-talk, or ignoring rest. Self-compassion research from Kristen Neff's framework shows that internal boundaries are foundational for external ones. Step 8. Seek external support when needed. Therapy modalities like dialectical behavioral skills training or boundary-focused coaching have strong outcome data for accelerating progress. Step 9. Celebrate and reinforce successes. Positive psychology interventions demonstrate that acknowledging small wins strengthens neural reward pathways and sustains motivations. Step 10. Create systemic supports. Use calendar blocking, auto-reply templates, and accountability partners, all backed by workplace intervention studies showing sustained boundary adherence. Additional research-supported tools include mindfulness practices that enhance emotional awareness, role-playing exercise for difficult conversations, and environmental cues like physical workspace changes to reinforce time boundaries. Now let's talk about some myths. Myth 1. Boundaries are selfish. Longitudinal studies across thousands of participants show the opposite. Healthy boundaries improve relationships by reducing resentment and increasing mutual respect. Myth 2. If someone truly cares, they'll just know my limits. Communication research consistently finds that people cannot read minds. Explicit boundaries actually deepen connections. Myth 3. Setting boundaries will make people leave. While temporary discomfort can occur, meta-analyses reveal that long-term relationship satisfaction rises when boundaries are present. Myth 4. Once set, boundaries never need adjustment. Life changes, new jobs, family shifts, health events, all these require ongoing calibration as confirmed by developmental psychology data. When boundaries are neglected over years, population studies link them to higher rates of chronic stress-related illnesses, relationship dissatisfaction, and career stagnation. The encouraging flip side is that consistent practice yields compounding benefits: lower anxiety, better sleep, stronger connections, and greater overall life control. Prevention and maintenance become second nature once the foundation is built. Evidence-based habits include weekly boundary audits, proactive communication of limits before issues arise, regular digital detox periods, and building a support network that respects and models healthy boundaries. Organizations that train teams on boundary norms see measurable drops in burnout and turnover, according to the 2026 Deloitte and Gallup Workplace Reports, lessons that translate directly to personal life. Here are some of the most respected resources that dive deep into the science and application. Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself by Nidra Glover Tawwab. Boundaries, When to Say Yes, How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. The Boundary Book and related work from the American Psychological Association's public education resources. Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic online guides linking boundaries to stress reduction. Peer-reviewed articles available through PubMed or Google Scholar on boundary setting and psychological well-being. Evidence-based apps and programs such as those offering assertiveness training modules or mindfulness courses specifically tied to interpersonal skills. The 2026 update to the APA's Stress and Resilience Guidelines, which now include dedicated sections on boundary practices. If today's exploration is landing for you, remember that the universal nature of boundary struggles makes this work accessible to everyone. Awareness is the spark, consistent practice is the fuel, and the science confirms that real lasting change is not only possible but predictable when these steps are followed. Take one concrete action today, perhaps a quick self-check on one area of life or drafting a single clear no script from an upcoming situation. You've already invested in your growth simply by listening. All right, thank you for spending this time exploring boundaries with me. Share this episode with anyone who might benefit from stronger limits and lighter shoulders. Protecting your peace isn't optional. It's the quiet foundation that allows everything else to thrive. I'll talk with you again soon, and I'll see you next episode.